Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray you're all well. Right, let's start. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana. وامنحنا يا ربنا علما وعملا وقربا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم أكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. So last time we were looking at how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told to say that he wouldn't accept any substitute for God as a judge. So a judge to decide whether he's a messenger or not. Clearly, there's enough proof. The Quran and the miracles that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam got have enough proof in them, as does the Sharia of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we talked about the point about they were using tactics to try and dissuade the believers from following the rules of Islam, starting with the matter of slaughtered meat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, after addressing the believers, addresses the disbelievers. Is here وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ لَكُمْ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِلَّا مَا اضْطُرِرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ. Why should you not eat what is slaughtered in Allah's name when He has already explained to you what He has forbidden to you, except when compelled by necessity? Many deviants, وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا لَيُضِلُّونَ. So there's two ways of reading it, with a dhamma, لَيُضِلُّونَ, and لَيَضِلُّونَ with a fatha. So you and يَضِلُّون, يُضِلُّون, يَضِلُّون بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِالْمُعْتَدِينَ. So he says, وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. What's preventing you, right? وَمَا لَكُمْ, like what's wrong with you? What's the issue? What's the problem? Because without any sort of barrier or impediment, the normal human reaction would be, Allah has made this permissible. It's halal now. His name's being mentioned when it's being slaughtered. Yes, let's eat it. There's barakah in it, right? And barakah is something that God, blessings that God puts in things, and you can tell when you see something that's devoid of it and something that has it. There's a stark difference. So, what's wrong with you? Why don't you eat from the meat that Allah's name has been mentioned, meaning it's been slaughtered according to the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approves of? So He doesn't approve of eating unslaughtered meat or meat slaughtered in the name of anyone else, any other false deity, any other person, anything like this, right? So He says, وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ واو الحال, that and the situation is that He's already given you a lot of detail, all the detail that you need. وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ لَكُمْ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ, and He's given you in details of what He's forbidden for you, either directly in the Quran or because this is a Meccan surah, also through the Prophet. It is detail, it's all revelation. Now He's given this knowledge to you in detail, and yet you're still hesitant and you don't want to eat from this. And it further highlights how wrong their choice is, that Allah's they're choosing not to eat this. And because the certain animals that they said we won't eat, the bahira and the sa'iba and all these which we looked at earlier, they wouldn't touch them. Why? Because of their own superstitions. So He said He's given you great detail, told you in great detail what is ma harrama alaykum, what is haram for you, forbidden for you. And it's interesting that the word ala, alaykum, is used there, and ala for something to be over you, overwhelm you. So it's haram, and the prohibition is almost though is looming over you, so you don't want to do it, right? إِلَّا مَا اضْطُرِرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ, except for you know, he's giving you the details of, you know, what's forbidden for you, except for the situations when you're compelled by necessity. Iddirar is when you push to the limit of harm, you could say, right? From darar, ifti'al, and then the ta is changed to a ta, as you can do when you study sarf morphology. So iddirar, and so you're pushed right to the point of death, basically. Like, if you don't eat this, you'll die. So in those situations, the prohibition is lifted, right? Someone who's, you know, in a desert and, you know, dying, and all he can eat is, you know, there's a bacon butty that he has with him, or, you know, some of the unslaughtered meat there, and that's his only choice. And ahlan wa sahlan, eat it. Eat what you need to stay alive. Don't go having a 7-course meal, if a few bites will do, and, you know, just to preserve your life, no problem, right? This shows the mercy and kindness of Allah, but yet they chose to follow their superstitions and saying, you know, we're following the way of God, we're following the teachings of Ibrahim. No, you're not. No, they won't. So he says, وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا, and many people, deviants, right? You know, and there's a nominal sentence with inna starting, so it's connected with what's before, and, you know, indicates power and indicates, you know, this is reality, is fixed. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا لَيُضِلُّونَ بِأَهْوَائِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. And so there's two qira'at here. One you can read as لَيَضِلُّونَ with a fatha on the ya, which means that there's many who go off course, right? And the other one, la yudillun, and the latter yudillun with the dhamma that we read is stronger in one aspect of the meaning, because not only are they misguided themselves, of course, but they don't satisfy themselves with that. They actually go and lead others, of course, as well. بِأَهْوَائِهِمْ, because of their ahwa, their hawa. What do we say? Hawa, the inclinations and the whatever their egos, you know, are drawn and attracted to, they chase after that. And this is dangerous. So someone who's off, and someone who's you know, just got a perversion, right, you could say, right? Or someone who's got let's say, for example, someone has a twisted taste in food, right? So this person will you know, happily will go eat snakes and, you know, monkeys and whatever, you know, predatory animals, and he invites you to his house to sit and eat. And even most people who don't follow, you know, guidelines on what to eat, haram and halal, will be disgusted by those things. You know, he pulls out some big cockroaches and beetles. Here, eat these. There's more in the back, don't worry, right? So there's people that go off because they follow their ahwa, and it's also a plural, speaking about a group, but their hawa, this inclination, or the egotistical inclination, and whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, they don't care. It's just what they want to do, so they go and do it. بِغَيْرِ عِلْم. So la yadillun, they go, of course, and then what happens? La yudillun, and because they're following their egotistical inclinations, they make others follow it, and they lead others, of course, because of the following the ahwa, بغير علم, without with the complete absence of sound knowledge from God, knowledge that of what's right and wrong, good and bad, beneficial and harmful. And they don't really seem to do that. Most people just have this idea, well, I want to do what I want to do. Well, okay, but the harm that comes with it is going to come back on you, right? And they don't listen, right? You know, like I was having a conversation recently with a friend, and, you know, we were discussing, there's this article or something that I read once, and they were saying that people that have, you know, multiple, especially ladies, unfortunately, but, you know, multiple, you know, promiscuous relationships, one night stand after one night stand, you know, it doesn't fulfill their basic human emotional needs, so they end up feeling empty, you know, worthless, you know, devalued, and it's a common phenomenon. But, you know, whereas marriage that has, you know, a person's rights, and, you know, it's not just a simple one night fling and that's it. You know, there's responsibilities, there's consequences to it. You know, it goes a lot further. in fulfilling a human being, right? But and that's why God has ordained, legislated marriage and forbidden this. But people don't see it. They think, well, I want to do what I want to do, and you're just putting limitations on me. No, those limitations are there for your benefit, but you don't see. And you don't want to see. So it's like that. He says. So then he says, and deeply connected to all of the above, Inna Rabbaka huwa a'lamu bil mu'tadin. Indeed, your loving Lord or Messenger, don't you worry about them. He's saying, right, that some consolation for the Messenger and to the believers, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly who's there crossing the limits of God and how they're doing it. And they can't harm the believers and they can't harm the messengers. No messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no matter what they might say, no matter what they might do, Allah knows what they get up to. And they cross His limits, they don't care, and they just rush past them. They cross the limits, so they're gonna have to deal with this fact, right? He says, your Lord, inna rabbaka huwa a'lamu, He knows better, He knows more than anyone, right, of the mu'tadeen, those who cross these limits. And that knowledge necessitates judgment, and it necessitates protection for the Prophet and the believers. But in the akhirah, there's going to be judgment. And so here, at this point, Imam al-Razi mentions that this verse is one of the proofs that you don't just blindly follow anyone in faith, right? The rulings of the deen, yes, you can follow, right? Because not everyone is qualified to extrapolate the rulings, but just following in when it comes to faith is a problem. You have to be personally convinced. You don't just follow someone else because their ahwa could be leading you, of course. And it's like that. And the same thing that no one's allowed to speak in the religion or make a comment about the religion without express permission. And the permission for us comes in the form of a proof, a sound legal proof. So someone who's making a claim, someone who says, if someone wants to come and claim snails are halal, if you cook them with white wine vinegar, then or whatever, right? You have to have a proof for it, otherwise you can't say it. Right, and so this is what he says. Allah knows who they are and what they do in their limits, and how they transgress. So, it's not going to change anything, right? They're not going to come out on top. Then he says, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ, shun all sin, open and secret. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْسِبُونَ الْإِثْمَ سَيُجْزَوْنَ بِمَا كَانُوا يَقْتَرِفُونَ. So he says that, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now says, based on the previous, prohibition, he says, follow the Prophet, follow the guidance. So now he says, shun, dharu, very strong word, the outward of all sin and the inward. And the word ithm is a strong word. It's a type of sin that's committed deliberately, and it impacts a person, it slows them down, it prevents them from doing more good and acting in a way that would please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These sorts of actions like zina and these sorts of things, it prevents a person from acting appropriately and properly. And so he says, shun it all, the outward of all sin, and so mean the excuse me, that which is known publicly and that which is done secretly. Shun it all. And you can say, shun the sins that are done with the limbs and the sins that are done with the heart, all of it. And this is, if you look at this, right, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْسِبُونَ الْإِثْمَ, indeed those who earn, so they go out of their way. It's easier to actually do good deeds. You intend a good deed, you get a good deed. You do the action, you get more rewards, and it's multiplied. It's easier to get the good stuff than the sins. So he says, those who go and earn, they go out of their way and put effort into it, earn sins soon. It's a promise, it will certainly be fulfilled. It might take a little while, you might not see it, you might not realize when it's coming, but it's certainly coming. So yujzawna, they're going to be recompensed. So their action, a direct consequence of the action is going to be the recompense. Bima kanu yaqtarifun, all that they used to do, all those sins that they used to get into, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to recompense them. Meaning, they will have to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will bring up all of the sins. You did this, and you did this, and you did this. Its effect was this. This is how you affected other people. This is how you did to yourself. All of these things, they're going to have to they're going to be judged for it with His, perfect knowledge, and they're going to be recompensed. Good for good, bad for bad, and it's going to be proportionate. So it's not a pleasant situation to be in if someone's got a stack of sins. And what you'll find is that anyone can do good deeds. Any believer can sit down and say La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. But it takes a particular amount of effort and a strong mindset and everything to shun sins. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to shun all sins, outward, inward, done with the limbs, done with the heart, all of them, right? Ameen ya Rabb. And so it's not easy, so therefore it's great, it's a tremendous act. So this, he says that those who go and they go and throw themselves into these sins, that they're gonna they're going to earn these sins. They're going to be in a way that actually should make them feel fearful. As Imam al-Biqai says, that the iktisab, the earning sins should actually make them feel fearful. And it's hope shouldn't be on the table if they're deliberately doing this. Generally, yes, there's this hope in the mercy of Allah, but someone who doesn't ignores that and just thinks, forget this, I'm going to do it anyway no matter what, and he wants to commit the sin, and then it's a problematic situation to be in, right? Allah protect us. And Allah, so and even the pattern, he says that yaksibun, yaqtarifun ifti'al, that it's this isn't the fitrah. Allah hasn't created us as people who want to go and yes, there's a weakness, but like we saw in Surah An-Nisa, that human beings have towards the opposite gender, for example. But the fitrah being on the default way would mean that a person's wanting to obey God, right, and not disobey. So then he says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ, and don't eat from what مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ, don't eat from the meat that which the name of Allah has not been mentioned. وَإِنَّهُ لَفِسْقٌ, and it is certainly be an act, that would certainly be an act of disobedience. وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ لَمُشْرِكُونَ. So he says, don't eat from that which the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't been mentioned. He says, لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. Imam Biqai says with the ala, there's an ishara that indicates if Allah's name hasn't been mentioned on it, then it's haram, and it's also impure, right? You can kind of glean that from the text and the usage of Allah. And so he says, don't eat from any of this. Don't eat any of this where Allah's name hasn't been mentioned, any of this meat. Why? Because it's not the slaughtering, it's not the actual cutting of the veins, whatever, itself that makes it permissible. Yes, that's a necessary condition, but it's the mentioning of the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because it's being made halal through the command of God. So that's what does it. That's why we have there's rulings that you don't mention anyone else's name, right? And if someone forgets, so there's a number of positions. There's a position of Dawood al-Zahiri and others of the ulama who said, they took it literally. If Allah's name wasn't mentioned, you cannot eat it. That's one position. And So if someone was to deliberately not mention the name of Allah, that's where there's a difference. Dawud al-Zahiri says, no, not permissible. Imam al-Shafi'i, he says, based on the hadith of the Prophet, but he says it would be permissible. He says because the name of Allah is in the heart of every believer. And Abu Hanifa, and in the Hanafi school, they say that if it's done forgetfully, someone forgetfully doesn't mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's a Muslim, fine. The name of Allah is in the heart of every believer, fine. It's halal to eat. But if someone can say and deliberately doesn't, then it becomes problematic, right? Okay, so he says, and don't eat from that which which the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't been mentioned. Innahu la fisq. It's fisq. And Imam al-Biqai says fisq means, normally they say al-khuruju an ta'a, coming out from the circle of obedience, you could say. But he says it's leaving that which is right and appropriate and going into that which is wrong and inappropriate. Right? That's what fisq means, and it's a strong word, right? He says wa inna shayatina. So why would someone do this? And why would they even promote, like they were promoting to the believers, just eat the meat that's fallen from the mountains, the animals that are fallen from the mountains. They were trying to promote stuff that's just died without being slaughtered. And why? It's from the shayateen, as we saw a couple of sessions ago. And he says, وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ. And the shayateen, the rebellious of the jinn and of the men, they inspire their allies. So they whisper things discreetly, quickly to their allies, just so people can get the wrong end of the stick about it, basically. Or we don't want this like this. We don't want to eat food like this. And just anything that's wrong and haram, they give it a glow up, and they make it seem appealing in the eyes of people. La yuhuna ila awliyaihim, to their allies, and their allies want to disobey them. Want to disobey God, so they follow them. Liyujadilukum, so that they can come and they can argue with you. So they come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. How can you leave what Allah has killed and only eat what you have killed? Well, maybe if you think about it, what we've killed, like what we slaughtered, it's been done, with the permission of God and in the way that God's intended. So that's how we can leave something that's died of, let's say, natural causes, or from a big fall or something like that, or a blow from a blunt instrument, right? That's how it is. So, if you stop and you think about it, you can see through the approach, but that's what they do. وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ إِذًا لَمُشْرِكُونَ. And if you obey them in these matters, then you would be idolaters, right? You would be polytheists. How? Just like the Quran says, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. Bani Israel, they took their scholars and rabbis as lords besides Allah. Why? Because they may not have prayed towards their lords, but what they did is matters of halal and haram, they took from their rabbis, and they said, okay, whatever he says is going to be halal, and whatever he says is going to be haram, and that's it, I don't care. This is different to a Muslim going to, say, a scholar or someone. When you go to a scholar or a mufti or someone who's going to give you a position or answer a question, what this person does is whatever answer he gives you, either he has a direct text from the Quran or the Sunnah which points to something that will allow this position, the basis of it. And if there isn't directly, then they'll infer something. And all the inferences of the ulama of the past have been documented in the books of fiqh, right? Or not every single one, but generally the general school and how people approach matters, they've all been documented. So someone learning like that is not making something up, rather they're taking knowledge that has a basis, which has a basis, which has a basis, the Quran and the Sunnah. for example. So he's saying that if you go and follow them, then you're going to be polytheists, right? You're going to have done what the Jews did in this situation. So Allah protect us, and it's not a pleasant situation to be in. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ease and afiyah. And we'll stop here and we'll carry on from this point, inshaAllah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.